Ross Tucker, host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. He can be found on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. He was working last night, Dolphins and the Patriots, and he joins us courtesy of DraftKings. Good morning. Good morning, Ross. How are you, buddy?
Morning, Dan. I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Well, great. You know, it's a football Monday, overreaction. What is the overreaction today that you would caution people against?
Well, I think probably going too far down the road with some of the 0-2 teams.
Okay.
I do think there are some concerns with the Cincinnati Bengals or even the Chargers because it feels like the Chargers are the same team, just a different year. But I think especially now with a 17-game slate, I think it's a little bit too early to start to throw out all those stats and all those numbers and make it seem like those teams are done. I know people still think they have a chance to make the playoffs and all that, but 0-2 doesn't feel as punitive as it used to.
All right, let me run down the 0-2 teams right now. You tell me this team will make the playoffs. Bears? Bengals? Broncos? Cardinals? Chargers? Patriots? Texans? Vikings?
Is that it?
Any of those going to make the playoffs?
I'll say the Bengals will make the playoffs. I'd be surprised if they didn't. The only other team I think out of that group that has a chance is the Chargers, but it's unbelievable, Dan, and I tweeted this yesterday. I feel like the Chargers, every single game is the same game. Is it ever not the 2-minute warning of the Chargers game? And whoever has the ball is down one score and they're driving to try to win the game. And what's curious to me, Dan, about the Chargers is they don't win their fair share of those.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of that's Brandon Staley, how much of that's Justin Herbert. You know, we all love Justin Herbert. We all think he's a fantastic player. We talk about him as a top 5 quarterback. But these first 2 games, he's had 6 drives, I think, in the fourth quarter where they could either have taken a 2-score lead to kind of put the game away, or when they were trailing, he could have led them to the game-winning score, and he hasn't been able to do it. And I think he's awesome, and I probably would blame Staley more for these close losses than Herbert, but still not a good look, right? So, you know, it feels like when you're in those situations and you watch Mahomes, it feels like he always gets it done, Dan. It feels like certain guys either always get it done or have a high likelihood of getting it done. Herbert's just not one of those guys for whatever reason.
Yeah, but are you siding with the coaches to blame more than the quarterback, or the other way around with the Chargers?
I'm going to put more blame on Brandon Staley. Yeah, I mean, they've had some curious decisions. You know what's fascinating to me about him, Dan? 2 years ago, okay, all of the analytics folks, all of the young people, they were loving Brandon Staley because every decision he made was based on, you know, expected points added or win probability. He went straight by the numbers, right? And I don't know if he got gun shy. I don't know if he lost his stinger or his confidence, but I'm watching the game against the Titans. They're like at the 42-yard line, 4th and 1 or something, and he punts it.
Yeah.
I'm always a little, and you could say maybe he learned from prior mistakes, but I'm always a little bit skeptical of coaches who it seems like have really changed their philosophy. Like, why did he change? And to me, the most likely scenario there is he was tired of getting criticized for being different. So if he's going to go down, he'd rather be conservative and not have people say, well, he's too new age. He's too going with the analytics too much.
Yeah, I know that we get caught up in this where these new coaches, new philosophy, then all of a sudden, now it feels like you have a coach who's coaching for his job, and now you get a little more conservative there. You know, Mike McDaniel, he's a guy that's quirky, different. You saw this last night with his offense, and that's a great offense there. But is he an analytics guy similar to how Staley is and some, you know, a few other coaches?
Well, he certainly understands, you know, the mathematics of some of the decision making that he undergoes. Although, you know, I thought the 55-yard field goal was a surprising decision by him. I mean, I would have thought that he would go for it in that situation late in the game. The kick wasn't even close, which, by the way, Dan, I am convinced that Jason Sanders hooked that ball to the left because the Patriots had that kid Schooler coming off the edge again from the right, the same way he had blocked the first field goal with the coolest field goal block technique I've ever seen. I think we're going to see more teams do that, not just to block it, but it's just distracting for the kicker, right? It's like those guys are so locked in, and now you have a guy running towards you from your peripheral vision. I'm convinced that that's part of the reason why Sanders hooked it the way he did.
Well, I think he surprised the Dolphins with that. And then I think after that, teams are going to be aware of a guy who is moving, and then you just got to chip him. But I'm waiting for the NFL to go, nope, that's illegal. We're not going to allow that anymore. But it was a great play by the Patriots to block the kick. We're talking to Ross Tucker, Westwood One, CBS Sports, NFL, and college football analyst, joining us on behalf of DraftKings. Well, the Dolphins, I think we're waiting to see, can the defense be up to the task that the offense is with the Dolphins? How would you handicap what you saw with the Dolphins and how sustainable it is?
Yeah, so I think, Dan, they've been the most impressive team in the AFC so far this season. I mean, I know we all come into the year and you talk about the Chiefs and the Bengals and the Bills, but for the Dolphins to do what they did, 2-0 on the road at pretty solid football teams with the Chargers and the Patriots, and I think, Dan, it's the way that they did it, right? So they threw the ball all over the field against the Chargers. We all know that. It was awesome. To go to New England now, and Belichick does a good job taking away Tyreek Hill. So the Dolphins run the ball as much as they did with Mostert and then play really good defense on the other side of the ball. I mean, you're already seeing the impact of Vic Fangio. They didn't even have Jalen Phillips, who's probably their best edge rusher for that game last night, and they still held the Patriots to only 17 points. The Patriots, they really have their own issues, but I do think that was a highly encouraging performance by the Dolphins defensively. They forced a couple turnovers. And right now, I mean, if you're doing AFC power rankings, I think it's hard not to have the Dolphins number one out of that group.
Help me understand the logic of the Jets against the Cowboys with Zach Wilson as your quarterback. And yes, you have a wonderful wide receiver, but you have two good running backs. And I thought the best way to neutralize Dallas and Micah Parsons would be to run the football. How do you explain them running 11 times?
Well, I think part of that is they didn't have early success, but I don't care. I'm with you, Dan. I mean, we've now seen enough of Zach Wilson, and we saw him yesterday. Honestly, the best thing he does right now is run. I mean, he ran for a bunch of yards, ran for some first downs, which helped the Jets. But that's, I think, the biggest storyline today in my mind, Dan, in the NFL, is what are the Jets going to really do at quarterback? I mean,
but would you try to trade for somebody in the next 2 weeks that let's say the Vikings lose at home, Chargers are in Minnesota. Like, at what point do you say, all right, what will you give us for our starting quarterback here? I mean, I know they have to come in and learn the offense, but are they going to stay with Zach Wilson, maybe get a backup, a veteran backup, and they're going to go into battle every week like this?
So I don't know that they're going to give up the draft choices and the money for a guy like Kirk Cousins of that caliber to try to make a big swing like that. But they're going to bring somebody else in. And I would think that they would bring somebody else in this week because it might take that guy a week or two to get ready, right? And you don't want to wait too long. I mean, they play the Patriots in the next game. You don't want to wait so long that you're putting whoever you bring in. I don't know, Case Keenum, name your favorite backup quarterback out there that they could bring in who's just steady, Dan. It just doesn't look to me like Zach Wilson is comfortable, that he believes what he's seeing. They need a guy in there that can just make the layups and not turn the football over. They don't need the highlight reel stuff. And I think they wanted to give it a week with Zach Wilson. Well, now we saw it. So I think either today or tomorrow, I think the longer the Jets go, before they give themselves another option at quarterback, the more of a disservice they're really doing to that entire team.
That Dallas defense is real, but that's because you start with Micah Parsons. Does he get the Lawrence Taylor treatment now with offensive coordinators here?
Yeah, I mean, he already is, and he's still producing, which is incredible. I mean, he is a phenomenal, phenomenal football player. His change of direction, his lateral agility, his closing speed. I mean, he's probably as close. Look, we've had some unbelievable guys, Von Millers and Derek, there's all kinds of guys, but he is as dominant of a guy as we've seen in a long, long time. 3 games into, or a couple games into here, his second year or his third year in the NFL, just extremely impressive. What I like about what Dan Quinn does, Dan, he's moving them around, right? And they're running stunts. If you just line them up in the same place every time, teams are going to help that way every time. So the fact that they're moving him around and getting him involved in stunts that allow him to get freed up a little bit more is very, very smart. He needs to be like a Where's Waldo guy so that the offense doesn't know where he is so they can chip or slide or whatever.
I know that there's wishful reporting with Colorado with Deion. I don't know how good they are. Colorado State's not good. Nebraska's not good. And they did beat TCU. And they're a 3-touchdown underdog against Oregon. Probably would be similar, I guess, against USC the following week. But how much of this do you think is sustainable this year with Deion in Colorado?
I think they're going to struggle the next couple of weeks. I heard the poll question, and I think Alabama will do a better job of fighting through their struggles than Colorado will continue to have success, especially with Travis Hunter being hurt and out for a couple of weeks. I don't know that was a great TCU team that they beat. It's a terrific story. Colorado's been terrible forever. They have a good team, but they really haven't beat a top 20 caliber team. There's a reason why they're huge underdogs against Oregon. I would imagine they will be as well against USC. If they can hang with those teams and win one of those games, I would be very, very impressed. He's done a fantastic job, but I don't think they're at that level yet. I mean, that would be unbelievable if they were at that. I mean, you're talking about top 10 teams. I don't think Colorado is a top 10 team yet.
Good to talk to you as always, Ross. Where are you off to next weekend?
Big one, Dan. My first SEC on CBS game, Ole Miss at Alabama, Saturday, 3:30. I can't wait.
Okay, look at you. Hey, great to talk to you. Safe travels.
Thank you so much.
That's Ross Tucker joining us on behalf of DraftKings and Westwood One CBS sports analyst there.